welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and all about your career journey so far.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Farrah, also known as the Grad Coach on socials. So I've actually been self-employed for 4 years, and I've been the Grad Coach specifically for 3 years. But I did have a employed career before that. I worked for about 5 years from a grad to then where I was going self-employed. So yeah, I've been sort of working for the past 8, 9 years, but had quite a variety in what I've done and how I've made money.
That's really exciting. So, where did it all start? Like, did you always think about being self-employed, or was it something that you kind of fell into a little bit after you had been working for a few years?
Yeah, definitely the latter. Although I feel like from a really young age, I had a lot of clues to suggest that I could be
Mm.
self-employed in the future. Like, for example, my family always tell this story of me being 3 years old and walking up to people and saying, "Hello, my name's Farrah Ellen Burke. I'm 3 years old. What's your name?" Just balls out confidence to just interact with people. And I feel like my whole life has been around that. I've always gravitated towards very extroverted roles where I'm essentially convincing people to do things, whether it's donate to a charity or sign up to something. So yeah, I feel like sales has always been kind of a part of who I am quite instinctively, but I didn't really have a big plan in terms of how I was going to, launch a business or anything like that. I can explain in more detail, but it did sort of happen more organically.
No, I love that story. It sounds like you kind of had that like entrepreneurial spirit, whether you realized it or not, which is really amazing. So, what was your first role out of uni? What did you do when you graduated?
So I was a business director in a company. So it was essentially like a business management grad scheme where we could rotate around lots of different roles and responsibilities. So I would do things like finance, marketing, sales, staff development, recruitment, loads of different things. And yeah, I was in that role for about 3.5 years, and then I went into head office and I just had a pure sales role.
Oh, very interesting. And do you find that kind of moving around into different departments within the company really taught you lots of different things and made you realize what you wanted to do?
Yeah, it gave me a really, really good foundation for actually having my own business because I think
Yeah.
this is what people don't necessarily realize when they go self-employed and they're a solopreneur, most likely in the beginning.
Mm.
You have to have lots of different hats and be responsible for all the inner workings of your business. So, yeah, admin, finance, marketing, sales, just keeping your life organized, just so many parts that go into it. So that actually gave me a really good backdrop because I was practicing on somebody else's business before I then went and took the risk with myself.
Yeah, and I think I always find it really interesting, especially when we speak about this, because I had like a really different path where I went straight into self-employment. And I feel like when you've gone and worked for a company, you learn so many skills along the way that you kind of get taught through learning different things. And I think if you're interested in maybe building a business, you often look at it from that lens of like, maybe how could I use this to help me start a business? Or how could these skills help me in the future? Was that something you consciously thought about? And like, what point in your journey did you start to think, maybe I'd want to go out on my own and do something for myself?
Yeah, firstly, I'm a huge proponent of this because I see this quite a lot on LinkedIn where I think the 9 to 5 gets de-glorified when actually
Mm.
I think it's such a viable route into entrepreneurship when you time it right. But yeah, I wasn't thinking myself that, oh, this is my grand plan to then go rogue and have my own business. I just knew that I was really enjoying picking up the skills and I thought at some point it would be useful for just life in general. But to be honest, the reason why I then ended up having my own business or the first business was that I was getting pretty sick of semi-corporate life and something that I was always really passionate about is working one-to-one with people, being a coach or a mentor. But when I did it in the business, it was more micromanagement, if I'm totally honest. It's kind of convincing people again to sort of hit a certain target or do a certain thing for the company rather than for themselves. So I was always sort of thinking I wanted to do something a little bit different. And then COVID came and it really forced me to reevaluate what I actually wanted to do. So, yeah, a lot of things collided in one go, which then eventually led to me leaving the company. My husband and I went traveling, and that gave us the opportunity to then test out having the first idea of a business and be self employed technically. But yeah, if we hadn't gone traveling, to be honest, I don't think I would have started a business in the UK.
That's so interesting. So, what did that first idea of the business look like when you were coming up with that in the beginning?
Yeah, so I actually worked in a tuition centre. So the company I worked for, Explore Learning, that's what did the business management grad scheme. So really, I'd been tutoring and teaching for a really long time alongside doing all the business stuff as well. So it was very natural for me just to become an online tutor. We thought that we were just going to do it very casually, just, sign up to an agency, do a few hours and that sort of thing. And just over time, with going traveling, there was just more and more demand, and we started to do it privately. So that was always business number one for me. I used to work with kids to help them get into like more prestigious schools by doing things like the 11 plus and other types of entrance exams. And then that was my sort of background before I then retrained as a accredited coach and then launched business number two. But for a really long time, I had both going at the same time, which again is another thing I don't think people speak about, just the reality of when you're getting started in a business, it's okay to also have your 9 to 5 or have another source of income so that you don't feel that innate pressure to perform from day one. It's
Yeah.
going to then drive you to make decisions that are not actually sustainable for your business if you have the pressure of it's got to make money immediately. So yeah, I'm happy to share more about the timeline of how that happened and how quickly I was able to leave business one and just go all in with business number two. But yeah, that was a huge part of how it actually happened.
Yeah, I think it's really important to talk about that in terms of it's not always that shiny, like you leave your job and then you're hitting six figures straight away. And it's like that success story that we often see on LinkedIn, which makes it feel like if you're not hitting those targets straight away, it's like you're a failure and you're not doing enough. And like I was exactly the same. Like I was working freelance alongside growing my business after university. So it was kind of like juggling the two and trying to figure out what was going to work. But I think sometimes as well, if you don't just have one thing to focus on, you're not like putting all your eggs in one basket and kind of hoping that that's going to work because you've got so many different avenues that could potentially work out too. And it sounds like you spotted an opportunity with what you then went on to do with the grad coach that was like needed at the time, but also built off your experience that you already had from the work that you'd done in the first business as well. And was that inspired by your own journey of like graduating and that whole process in terms of the grad coach?
Yeah, so again, I'll be really, really transparent with this. This wasn't a coming to Jesus epiphany moment of, oh, my absolute mission in life is to work with graduates. I actually did a marketing program because I was a few months in as a qualified coach and I was working with, I had no niche. I worked with people as young as 16, people as old as 60, and was helping them with a whole range of things that they would bring into sessions. But then I realized over time that it's really hard to market if you don't have a specific group of people that you're trying to target. So I, long story short, did a marketing sort of program, learned a lot about having an ideal client and that sort of thing. And the mentor said to me, what's a group of people that that you have a sense of authority with, that you've sort of been there, done that, and you could build a sense of empathy and trust. And for me, I then thought back to, oh, well, I used to hire hundreds of students and grads. I used to be their line manager. I used to be so involved in, the day-to-day recruitment decisions of who we were going to hire, who we might fire, and all that stuff in between with HR. So I thought, yeah, I would actually really love to work with fresh grads. So I launched myself. Actually, I've realised I've just missed my business birthday. It's the 4th of June. But yeah, long story short, I just launched myself as the grad coach and just started talking about, the difficulties of finding a job or finding your feet when you first graduate. And I was totally blown away by the traction that it had in the first few months. I had so many people in my diary wanting consultations, wanting to know what the service it was that I was offering. So I did not anticipate how bad the job market had become even then, just post-COVID in 2022, and just how much the average grad was craving clarity and direction and advice about what to actually do next. So that completely blew me away. And then really the rest is history. Just that's why I've stayed the grad coach, because there's clearly a need. If anything, the need is getting greater. So yeah, I love what I do, but it wasn't this big, oh, I have to do this thing. And again, I think that's another myth about working for yourself and having a business. It hasn't got to be the ultimate thing that you're passionate about. I think you've got to have a threshold of passion, but also it's got to be viable and it's got to make sense. Because yeah, I mean, I could have picked something that I could have been really passionate about, but I didn't have the authority over the target audience, and so it would have fallen on deaf ears. Or maybe I would have been really passionate to help solve a problem, but the problem's actually really small and not worth it for people to spend money. So I think there needs to be several things that fall into place for it to be a viable business, and it just so happened that I actually struck quite lucky with getting all three of those things.
Yeah, and I think what you talked about there in terms of like going on a bit of a journey of self-discovery and just being open-minded to like, okay, I'm going to test out this idea. I'm going to work with literally everybody, different age groups, and then figure out, okay, where do I want to go? Like, where do I have that authority? Where's my credibility? What's my experience? How can I relate to these people? And then really just follow that and be curious and see whether it works, because often I find a lot of people that come to me who want to start a business, but they want to start a business because it's a business rather than actually I'm really passionate about this particular topic or I want to create something in this space. I often just say like, just go and be curious, try and experience as many things as possible, meet as many people, have those conversations, because you never know where that's going to unlock something for you or kind of teach you something new that you didn't know before. And I think that really allows you to discover where is your like area of expertise, and it really shows with the Grad Coach that you've been able to really lean into that, and especially tap into that need too, which I completely agree is like growing all the time. And I'd be curious to know, like, do you feel like things have changed quite a lot over the last 3 or 4 years since you started doing it? Has the need of the students changed, or is it still very similar now to when you started?
Yeah, so really good question. I think there are lots of things that are the same and things that are changing. The recruitment process is becoming increasingly more digitalized, like ATS technology and, different versions of AI that is incorporated now with bigger businesses, but increasingly smaller businesses as well. I feel like as well, post COVID, that was definitely a turning point. So that I'd already started by that point, and I think a lot of people felt especially lost and especially behind. They just felt like they had so many lost years of their 20s, be it, a compromised experience at uni to then after uni, maybe they've had internships rescinded or job offers that have fallen through, just so many things because of like the economic factors that led them to be further behind than what they had always expected. But I do feel like there are just some universal truths, to be honest with you. I mean, I really still relate to that feeling of you go through 21 years of education, give or take, and then you just have to suddenly figure it out and know all these sectors and markets and job titles. And, I think back to my own experience. I was a first generation graduate. I managed to get into a really great university. It was sort of the best one for my course at the time. And I had left not knowing really a fat lot about being employable and what markets I could enter. And actually, interestingly, from doing this work, I've then realised in retrospect how much money I lost out on, because I'm thinking, well, I could have been a strategy consultant in corporate. I could have done so many other things, but I just didn't even know they existed, and I didn't know, therefore, that I could be a great fit for them. So, yeah, I definitely think there is a lack of access to information. Class, I think, can be a factor in it, but I think it can be lots of things as well. So, yeah, I do think across the board, it would be great if UK universities were just better at educating all students about what their opportunities could be after uni. But I somehow don't think that's going away, to be honest with you. I think they've got enough difficulties as it is. Universities are not performing that great financially at the moment, so they're probably not going to then add another string to their bow. So yeah, I feel like this problem is probably here to stay, unfortunately, but it's nice that I'm here so that I can make a difference, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because obviously you work directly with the individuals, so the graduates that are coming out of university. Have you ever tried to approach unis and work directly with them to support the students? And have you done that before?
Yeah, I have worked with some before. I did a set of masterclasses recently with a London-based uni, but um, B2C, so going straight to the
Mm,
client, to the consumer, has definitely been more successful. I think in the early days when I was launching myself, there was a sense that I was in competition with universities, and That's not true. I'm not here to inherently bash them either, but equally, I'm not going to lie to people when I say there's the good, bad, and ugly of careers advice out there. And unfortunately, I have had clients come to me who have had quite bad advice or just limited advice, very generic advice. And that's why we're now working together. So it's like all industries, I guess. You know, there's really great university career services out there. There's maybe not so great or slightly underfunded ones. But yeah, I don't see myself as in competition with them, but perhaps sometimes they see it that way.
Yeah, I completely agree. When I started out with Studio Self Made, I thought I went directly to the university to be like, okay, they will support the programs that I can do with the students. And then soon realized that they were very slow to change and move on things. So I got frustrated with the process of like, I really want to help these people, but they're kind of getting in the way of this moving forward. So I did exactly the same as you and then went straight to the students and graduates instead. And I think they're the ones that are really in need of it, especially when they've graduated university and they're kind of out of that safety net of the university and education experience. They're like, okay, what now? How can I get that support that maybe my university won't give me anymore? And I think that's obviously where you come in with the support that you offer to kind of help them over 3 months or longer in terms of the process of getting the job that they want and things like that. So I think it's really powerful, especially if they've been used to having that support over their time in education, to then have a coach afterwards as well. Do you ever find that they come to you with kind of the mindset blocks, or is it mainly like the application blocks? Yeah, interesting.
I would say honestly, yes, it's both, and I work across the spectrum. So I was literally saying this to a prospective client last night that we can work very much on the practical side, and sometimes there is just a genuine knowledge gap. And I say this all the time that you can't coach over a knowledge gap. There's no amount of manifestation or mindset, stuff if you just don't know how to write a CV or you don't know how to approach an interview. Like we absolutely need that knowledge in place. But then you're quite right, we could have all the knowledge, but we don't have the attitude to underpin it that means that we actually go out and use it or use it consistently. So yeah, a ton of my clients, understandably, because of the job market, because of post-university life, there can be many manifestations of a lack of confidence, procrastination, just sort of like faulty beliefs about their prospects in the market, like the job market's cooked and that sort of thing. And it's like, yes, it's hard, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible, and it definitely doesn't mean that it's impossible for you. I'm much more of a proponent of sort of like you as an individual. I think you have way more agency than you think you do compared to the macro trends of, yes, of course, economically the jobs market is in a rough place, there's more sort of demand than supply, but what's to be done about that? You're either going to lay down and say, well, I'm not going to bother then, or you're going to try your best hand at it. And that's what I want to help people to do.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you've had so many graduates work with you and go on to get incredible roles just proves that it is possible, and it's like there are jobs out there that people can access. It's just about knowing the process that they need to go through. And like you said, you can't have all the skills and no confidence, because then you're not going to do well at interview, or you're not going to put yourself out there for opportunities, and then you're going to be holding yourself back from what's actually possible as well. Do you find that some of the graduates are like self-selecting out of opportunities because they don't think they're good enough for them as well?
100%. So many grads will say to me, what's the point in doing grad scheme season? I've heard that there's a 0.1% chance of you getting one, but what they don't factor in is that not every candidate is created equally, not in terms of their worth inherently, but in terms of how they put themselves forward as candidates. 90% of those people were not serious to begin with. They're using copy and paste CVs and just not putting their best foot forward. So actually, if we looked at the real statistics, it's probably a lot more favourable. And yeah, there's so many examples I have of clients where, against extreme odds, like they've literally been told at assessment centre there's been 1,000, 2,000, sometimes the most I've heard is 6,000 applicants, and they're hired out of the final 10 people. So it's just one of those where, yes, there is a chance that you could fail, but if you don't do it, you are always going to fail. So literally the only choice you have is to give it a go and put your best foot forward and just see what happens.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think often, especially in this sort of space, rejection is such a big thing, isn't it? And I think I see so many pieces of content on LinkedIn about the amount of times somebody's been rejected for roles, and I bet you find that quite a lot. Maybe people coming to you that have been rejected quite a few times, and they're now thinking this is actually impossible. Like, what have you suggested so far in terms of helping people overcome that rejection? In terms of keep putting themselves out there to keep going after these opportunities.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you don't know what you don't know. So
Mm,
that's the result that you've got with the limited information you have right now. But there's always another card to play. There's always a better way to approach your applications. I mean, for example, there was a BBC kind of viral post, you might have seen it, that went round a couple of weeks back of a grad saying she couldn't even get a part-time job in a warehouse. She'd done over 2,000 applications and basically had got nothing from it. That is very sad, and we shouldn't have that. Grads should absolutely have just more of a viable chance in the market. However, when I hear 2,000 plus applications, I know that strategy it doesn't work.
mm,
There is no way that all 2,000 of those roles were graduate friendly, were her friendly, like actually a specific sector,
mm.
a set of skills that worked for her, and that were high quality applications. Just like that, even I couldn't do it. There's no
Yeah,
way you could craft that many high quality applications, even if you were an expert in AI and you
yeah,
fought for it. So I always go to the thinking of, okay, we probably practically need to have a look at some things more than we do the psychology of things. Because yes, obviously, yes, getting over rejection is really psychological, but how you actually get yourself out of that cycle, I think it's a lot of practice.
yeah. And I think these stories as well, with these like big numbers, like 2,000 applications, they're the ones that are kind of causing the scaremongering amongst graduates to be like, it's impossible for me. But these big numbers sell the stories on
Yeah.
in the media and on social media, so that's why it grabs people's attention. But I completely agree. I think when you see things like that, you do have to kind of look at it with a bit of a critical lens and think, how many of those maybe like easy apply on LinkedIn? Like they've just clicked a button and they've sent off an application in literally 5 seconds. Like that's not really taking the time to really apply properly for these roles. And I think with the rise of AI, and I know you mentioned it before, I feel like it's now becoming even more competitive because people can apply for so many roles at the same time. How have you found AI fits into the process of applying for jobs now?
Yeah, so I think it's quite broad. It can have lots of different
Mm,
functions, but in terms of what you're probably thinking about is actually the writing of the applications. There are ways that you can use it, but it's got to be based on, like, for example, I have like a template, the tried and tested template that I have for cover letter writing. But it's not as simple as you just put in the company name and the role. I've seen so many of those and they're trash. You need to put them in the bin. They do not work. This is more of a framework. So it's almost like a checklist of, okay, have you included two unique features about the company or the role? And you've sort of connected it to why you'd be interested in working at a place like that. Have you got your top three strengths that have come from the job spec? And have you got a piece of evidence and a statistic to show how good you are at leadership, communication, problem solving, that sort of thing? So it does sort of walk you through. Now, I have been testing out myself and my clients as well with this idea of, okay, we could plug in the framework, could plug in my CV that has been vetted, and then use ChatGPT to sort of combine the two. But again, you need to be really critical with that because it's a good place to start, but I don't think it's the final point. Not at the moment, definitely not.
yeah.
Be double checking and triple checking things. But then on the other side, we do have ATS technology. It's not really technically AI. It's been around way before AI, but it's this idea that it's a objective computer process where it's looking for a certain amount of keywords and phrases from your CV. And that we absolutely need to play the game of. So, for example, all of my clients have a software that they can do unlimited scans on their CVs and just find out more exactly, okay, these are the keywords and phrases I need to include.
Mm.
And it's absolutely transformative. So like it's not uncommon for a client of mine to get anything from 50 to 90% of their applications passing through the ATS and going to the next stage, especially for things like grad schemes, because they heavily rely on ATS. So there is like a reality to it, and there are functions that we can use AI for. But again, we need to be really careful that we're not over relying on it. Like I've heard stories of people going for interviews and then plugging the interview question there and then into chat and then just regurgitating this script. Absolute nonsense. And just it sort of underpins, I feel, the inherent lack of self-belief that some candidates and students and grads can have in themselves, to the point that they would rather outsource all of that thinking to AI rather than just trusting their innate abilities. And that's where I think psychology and just that sort of thing can come in as well, because they are better than AI, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of at risk of sounding like everybody else if you're just using AI. I mean, there's quite a few dead giveaways with using like some AI tools that you can really tell it's AI straight away. So if you are just literally copy and pasting straight from that, you're just going to be able to tell. But I think it's an important part of the process, and I think it's important that we don't ignore that AI is there, because I think some people have the approach of like, oh, I just want to avoid it, I don't like it, I never want to use it. But it's kind of knowing the tools, learning them, and but then understanding where you as a human need to come into that process and add your thoughts and your perspective, and also if you're working with a coach as well, like how they can help you shape that too. But like you were saying before, it's all about the prompt too, like the fact that you've got a cover letter or a CV prompt that you can put in and kind of shape it around that. I think that's the most important part, because you can't just, like you said, put in the company name and hope it comes out with something that's going to work for you. So yeah, it's a really important part of the process, but I definitely think we still need to bring ourselves into that too.
Yeah.
And like you said, like the psychology part of it, the kind of the self-belief, I think it's not handing over all of the process to the AI to do it for you, because you need to be part of that process and bringing yourself into it as well.
Yeah, and one of the biggest concerns I hear on the psychological side is imposter syndrome. So that is a recipe for that being propagated, because if you feel like you only got to an assessment centre purely because you outsourced it to everyone else but yourself, I don't think that's great for your confidence. And that probably will show at that final
Yeah.
human element at an assessment centre or at a final interview. So yeah, it's so true. I think it's really important to learn to integrate these things and be curious about these things, because I don't think it's going anywhere, but just know with a critical lens what are its pros, what are its limitations, and just what do you need to do, and that, yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's so true in the fact that you're getting to a point where you're going to have to be there in person. So you can't be hiding behind AI if you're actually there at an assessment centre too. So yeah, no, it's really interesting. And I think, have you experienced any challenges yourself with imposter syndrome and mindset along the way with your business journey?
So great question. I think relatively no, which is probably not the most fun answer. But yeah, I just want to be honest. There's definitely moments, don't get me wrong. I mean, the thing is, I wouldn't label it as strong as imposter syndrome. I don't necessarily myself buy into that concept, because I just feel like I deserve to be here. I've worked hard. I know it's almost the opposite of what we're saying. I know the hard graft that I've put in. I know the authority that I've built and the credibility I have. So why would I doubt that? Why would I not want to be in certain rooms, promoting myself, talking to sort of like, certain people in networks, that sort of thing. But yeah, am I nervous, or do I have self-doubt along the way? Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've wrestled with, just being more experimental with my business, to be honest. So I've always had this opinion that if you want your business to grow, you're going to have to change something, whether it's adding another income stream, or sort of changing a certain product or service, being bolder, braver with your pricing. There's so many things that go into actually growing a revenue. So that requires the risk of getting it wrong potentially, or it backfiring. And that's always a little bit scary. But the more I've done it, the more I'm at peace with that, and the more resilient I am, to be honest with you. But yes, I think it probably, for the average person, that is the hardest part of starting and having a business. Just, it's a lot of putting yourself out there again and again, risking the embarrassment, risking the failure. And I don't know, I think some people are just naturally more open to being embarrassed or the risk of it, and I think I am that person, to be honest with you. But I think a lot of people can work on it, and you definitely can become more resilient.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I actually spoke about this with Elizabeth on the previous episode of this, and she said something similar around she didn't really resonate with imposter syndrome, but kind of self-doubt and kind of those feelings show up. And I think I feel exactly the same. Like if I'm ever in rooms where I'm like the only female business owner or the only young female business owner, I will actually look at it from a different lens of, okay, I'm here to like represent the young female business owners in this room. Like I want to get my voice heard so that I can represent people like me in these spaces. So I feel like it's kind of you kind of have to shift your focus, because I think women especially are told that imposter syndrome is kind of common amongst us. We're meant to feel that way, or meant to feel a little bit out of place if we're out of our comfort zone. But often it's actually like, how can we use these as opportunities as well to like push ourselves out of our comfort zone? Because like you said, when you're growing a business, you do have to risk failure and risk that is part of the process. And is that something you've learned how to manage? Like if things haven't gone as well, like do you kind of feel like it's a setback, or do you now like look at it as more of like an opportunity to grow?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a difficult one because the reality
Mm,
is that my business, I need it for life. I mean, I've just bought a house. We have quite a significant mortgage that we're about to have, and just, going to have a baby as well. So it's the thing that can be difficult is when it's your so I mean, I have different income streams, so that's something to play around with. But the business as a whole, I have one business, so it's having a balance between strategic experimentation, but also safeguarding my bottom line, because I need to sort of make a sort of minimum amount. But then there is an amount of money that equally I can play with to either invest or lose potentially across a quarter or across a month in service of being more experimental. But I think what can help you with that is, obviously I'm not expecting people to do this from day one, but over time, the more income streams you have, the more options you have about, oh well, I know that I'm not going to play around with my one-to-one services, like they're here to stay, but maybe the digital products I can play around with, or the employer partnerships, for example. So it just gives you a little bit of room to be flexible. But yeah, again, it gets glorified on LinkedIn of, oh, I risked everything and it all paid off. It's like for every one of those stories you hear, you're going to hear or never hear another
mm.
999 versions where it didn't pan out that way. So yeah, I think you need to be balanced.
Yeah, it's definitely not like an all or nothing kind of way of looking at it. As often we see online, it's like you said, like you've risked everything and it all worked out magically and it was fine. Like it's actually thinking about, okay, where can I take a calculated risk? And if it does fail, what's the consequences of that, and what does that look like? But for me, like if I've ever tested something out in the business and it's not worked out, it's like, okay, actually looking at it, and rather than it being like a personal failure, looking at it as like, okay, how can I learn from this next time, or why didn't it work, and observing it and kind of being self-aware that it's like it's not a personal reflection, it's more to do with the business. Or it could just be like the economy at the time, it could be what's going on in the world, it literally could be anything. And I think the fact that you started your business like during COVID, off the back of COVID, obviously we went through quite a big transitional period as well. Like things were very much digital, then people kind of moved away from being online, and then it's kind of a little bit of a balance now. And did you find, because obviously a lot of your services are digital, aren't they? You do a lot of the
Yeah,
coaching online.
I've actually
Have
never
you,
coached a client in person.
no, that's really interesting. Have you ever been asked to do it in person, or do you find that online really works for you?
Yeah, it really works. Very rarely do I get that request. But no, I mean, it's wonderful in the sense of I can work with anyone, anywhere. And sometimes I do have clients where they're international, so maybe they've gone back home to India or Dubai or China, and then we're still able to have conversations. Equally, they could still be just up the road from me. But yeah, I think there's amazing merit in doing things online. And yeah, it's interesting because my mum is also a therapist. So she works in person with people, but she does do counselling and therapy online as well. And she finds it strange. I mean, she's a baby boomer, so it's a definitely different generation. But she finds it quite strange that potentially all of her business might have been just online. Whereas I don't see the difference. Honestly, us having this conversation now, it feels like we're in the room together. I don't feel any different. I don't feel any less bought in or engaged or empathetic. So yeah, I think it can be used incredibly well.
Yeah, definitely. And do you feel like you've built your business to kind of create a lifestyle for yourself that you wanted within your business too? Because I think a lot of people, when they're starting a business, coming up with an idea, they don't always think about, what lifestyle do I want? Like, do I want to be meeting in person? Do I want to have an office? Do I want to be based in a major city so I can be close to people? Or do I want it to be online? Was that like a conscious decision when you were starting the business?
Kind of no, because initially when we started, I was in Thailand. So there was a reality to how many people I could even have calls with. I was doing sales calls right until late at night when I first got started. And then as things became more successful, we just gradually moved closer and closer to a UK time zone, and then literally just came back to the UK. So yeah, I think like my take on that is there's got to be a push and pull. Definitely, you don't want to start and then maintain a business that feels completely disingenuous and it's totally not how you want to work. But equally, just being selfish and not recognizing what the market demands and just what the general expectations are, that can be a recipe for your business not actually working. So it's having a bit of a balance. And I feel like, yeah, I mean, it's allowed me to do so many things. Just number one, I love working at home. The idea, because I've obviously been pregnant, the idea that I have been pregnant and potentially would have had to have gone into central London and have a full-time job whereby I'm dressing up, wearing makeup and just being in person with all these people, it just wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have survived. So yeah, I really, really value the flexibility of being able to work from home. My husband works from home as well with his business, so that's just amazing. And as we're getting ready to have a baby, that's a huge plus that we have. But equally, I can't work 4 hours a week. There's a reality to what it actually requires to make the type of money that I want to make.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's realizing that, isn't it? Because again, another thing that's sold on social media is like that 4 hour work week, and you'll kind of never work a day in your life if you're working on a business that you love. But it is still work at the end of the day. And even if you do enjoy it, you've still got to move it forward. You've still got to be creating content. You've still got to be doing all the parts of the business that you need to do to make it grow. And I think the fact that you do a lot of one-to-one support is really interesting. And this is something I've found with my clients too, with them being in the kind of Gen Z demographic. I found, I don't know whether you found this similar as well, that they like one to one more than they like courses,
I
and
do.
they like that accountability. And is that something you've kind of noticed within your clients as well?
Yeah, because actually, maybe about a year into my business, I wanted to launch a cohort and I did all the marketing, all the promo, all the testing, and then literally nobody signed up and everybody said, I really want to do this, but can we just do it one to one? So I just then got more one to one clients. Yeah, I don't know whether that's the combination of university is at scale. Often cohorts are minimum at least 50 people, but sometimes up to 300, 400 people. COVID also meant that it was very detached. They didn't really have a lot of, bespoke in-person support. And maybe it is just life now, to be honest. We're just maybe not as connected as we once were because of digitalization, because of AI. So having a real human that's going to hold you to account and just challenge you and get to know you on a more visceral level rather than just the surface, I think can be very, very powerful. And actually, the longer I work with clients, so those who sort of are with me for at least 3 months, when we check back in a year or 2 years time, they always talk about certain conversations that we had that in a way was nothing to do with the job search. It was to do with them fundamentally as people. And it's sort of these things that have stuck with them for their next promotion or their next job or just something else in their life. It could be in their personal life, for example. So it can be really, really powerful stuff having one-to-one intervention rather than everything being so accessible but so generic at the same time.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people that work outside of the space just think, create a course. Like you could support so many more people if you just turn it into video content and then they can watch it on demand. But I found there's definitely been a pushback against that. I think maybe burnout from doing university online, or like there's so much content you can watch online in general that if you just create a course, it's just kind of gets lost in in the amount of content that they've got to watch. Whereas that one-to-one connection not only creates that accountability, but it allows them to kind of action things, ask personalized questions, and actually get that support as well. And I think young people really do want to invest in themselves and invest in their future. And that's something that I think people that work outside of the space don't really get. They think Gen Z are just kind of messing around, they're on TikTok, they're not really like taking action towards their future. But I think there's so many people out there that are really engaged with this process. And if that's what you found through working with the people you do as well.
Yeah, 100%. There's just been amazing success stories, honestly, just where people
Yeah.
put in the work in between sessions. it's incredible what comes back in terms of the type of jobs that they're landing, type of salaries that they're getting, the number of job offers. And don't get me wrong, I think for the right people, something like a community can really work. Like, for example, I do have a job search community, and I've had a few really standout people where last grad scheme season, so we're just sort of coming to the end now, they had multiple job offers that, you know, they came along to everything and they really made the most of it. And that's incredible to see. But I definitely noticed that they're in the minority. I think when it is a community or it is a course, there's just less urgency, there's less pressure to actually fulfill things. So yeah, I do think the accountability of having someone in the room, be it virtually or otherwise, can be a huge driver for what you actually get out of the process. But it's nice to have flexibility. It's nice to have different price points, so people can make different decisions about what they need or what they can get at that moment of time. But yeah, I do love seeing the transformation of one-to-one stuff.
Yeah, no, it's really amazing. And have you ever had a business mentor or coach that you've worked with to help you on your journey?
Yeah, it's funny. I wish I'd had more actually,
Mm.
but I have had a couple of people along the way, more sort of in a coaching capacity than a mentoring capacity, I would say, because I'm definitely someone who needs to get all my thoughts out and just have a thinking space to process it almost myself, but just having somebody alongside me. So that can be really powerful. To be honest, I'm almost gonna break my own rule in a way, but I am actually playing around with using ChatGPT for this type of stuff. I've been using the voice mode and I've been setting up a lot of prompts over the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks, and it has been very, very interesting. It's interesting to see, maybe for someone like myself, where I know I have the accountability because this business has to run. There's no way I'm going to not do things. It absolutely has to run. So if I don't need accountability, what do I need from a partner, be it AI or a human or whatever? And that's where I think for me, something like ChatGPT is very good. Whereas for other people, maybe they don't need what I need, but they need the accountability. And that's when I think a human is better. So it's just sort of figuring out what stage are you at, what tools are genuinely going to be best for you.
Yeah, and I think as a solo business owner, which we both are, I think having somebody just to, well, somebody or an AI kind of robot talking to you, but I think somebody like that to bounce ideas off. And if you've just got an idea, you're like, actually, I want to just ask it these questions. I've done exactly the same thing, both like for the business, but also like for my own mindset or mental health. If I'm feeling like there's a certain block showing up or a certain feeling, I'll just be like, okay, can I process this? Or what are some prompts that I could maybe journal over to help me work through that challenge? And I find that really, really useful in bringing it into the process. And I still need people around me, still need like my network to kind of talk to. But it can't replace that human element. But I think it's so powerful in the moment if you're just wanting to bounce ideas off something and nobody's there with you, rather than just writing it down or typing it out on your own. I think it's really good to just give you those kind of different ideas or different perspectives as well. So you've been using it for like business challenges and kind of, or like more mindset blocks.
And
Yeah.
what I find it really, really good for is because it has that, again, it might haunt us in a few years' time because we're just giving away our data. But to be honest, I don't really care about this type of data. But I just share all of my ideas, all of my thinking process, and it just perfectly captures it. And I have a running list of my business development sort of to-dos that I need to be working on and how to prioritize them, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's really good for capturing mass information or thoughts and then condensing it down and organizing it with me. Whereas obviously humans have a limitation on how much they remember. There's bias at play, so we will choose to remember certain things and other things we disregard because we don't think it's important, but to the client it might be really important. So it's that kind of objective lens that I do really appreciate with the AI.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like I was saying before, it's important to embrace these tools and that use them when they're there and kind of bring them into the processes to help you, while still keeping like the different human elements to your business as well. And I know we both met on LinkedIn, didn't we? That's how we kind of connected. And has social media been quite a big part of growing your business? And was that something that, yeah, because you said you did a marketing course at the start. So was that kind of what prompted your journey to start
Yeah.
creating content?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So LinkedIn was my first place. I mean, before I even became the grad coach, my first place was actually Instagram, just my personal Instagram. Got a lot of clients through that. But then when I pivoted and had a niche, LinkedIn was my number one. probably relied on that for at least a year before I introduced TikTok seriously. And then that's been my second one. And then I dabble a little bit in Instagram, but it's kind of a bit of an afterthought, if I'm honest. I do have an email list. And obviously I now am at a point where word of mouth, referrals, I do in-person speaking gigs and that sort of thing as well. So that all helps. But my business would not exist without social media, which can, for some people, might seem like a scary thing because maybe then it seems like I'm over relying on it. But equally, I just think that's the world of business these days. I don't know how you have a B2C functioning business without some use of social media. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but I think that is the way of the world, and it's how you become visible, it's how you gain authority and credibility. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love social media. I would be nothing without it.
Especially connecting with young people as well, and people in different points. I think it's so important to be across different platforms, and like you said, like you don't want to be reliant on just one platform. Like I think it's fine to grow most of your business on social media, but the fact that you've got different platforms and you've got an email list and all the other things that you do, you're not just relying on one place being the only way that people find you. Do you have a favorite platform for creating content?
100%. LinkedIn is just the most efficacious one. So for, let's say if I got 100 leads on LinkedIn, possibly 80 out of 100 end up becoming paying clients. It's that potent. Whereas TikTok, it's great for reach and great for visibility, but not as good, I would say, for conversion. Instagram, I'm not super big on it, so that's probably debatable. It's probably a little bit in the middle. But yeah, I love LinkedIn as a platform. I know it gets bad rep on socials. It's really interesting when I'm on TikTok how it's vilified. And I get it, some people are a little bit insufferable on the platform, or I don't know. But my network seems great. I get loads of value from the people that I follow. So I think it's really relative to who you're sort of looking at and buying into. But yeah, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful place to start a business. And I think you could easily have a sort of minimum functioning business, I don't know, making like your first 20, 30, 40K a year just on that platform.
Yeah, LinkedIn is my favorite place as well. And I completely agree. A lot of people are like, why? Why LinkedIn? Like it's such a corporate place. But I do think it's about who is on your feed and how you shape your connections and your space on there. I think a lot of people make the mistake of just following other students. That's what I find a lot of my clients do. They follow other students that are just like them, or people that are like, because I work with a lot of creatives, like graphic designers, like very similar industries to them, and then they're wondering why their content is getting no engagement or they're not getting work from it. So I think it's really about like shaping your audience, connecting with people, being really intentional about how you use it, rather than just using it like a personal social media platform where you just connect with your friends. I think there's so much opportunity on there. And I think the comment sections and people actually do have conversations more than they do on other social media platforms, I found, that are actually like genuine. And I think that might have been how we connected, maybe through the comment section and then kind of messaged afterwards. So you can really find like-minded people through there.
Yeah, I agree. I very rarely comment on TikTok, but I comment all the time on LinkedIn. But maybe
Yeah.
that's just me. That's my own bias that, oh, it's not worth it on TikTok, and maybe it is. But yeah, definitely. I think there's so many pluses to LinkedIn, but you're right, you have got to curate your audience. If you don't have that step, it's not as, in my opinion, it's not as organic as the other socials. So it relies on you making use, for example, of those 100 connection requests that you have every week and thinking, right, if I could add 100 people of my target audience into my network, how could I find those people? And that's how I did it in the beginning. Every week without fail, I would find 100 grads and just hit connect. And then over time, you hit your first 1,000, 2,000. And now I don't really have to do that because it's more kind of the other way, which is good. But if I needed to, I could always go back to that. And if you really, really needed to, you could do cold outreach to people. I did a little bit of that when I was brand new, but the way some people do cold outreach is just not what I would recommend. I'm a lot more rapport building and just, yeah, that sort of thing. But if I really, really needed to, I could just find 100 people, send a message to them, and probably they'd end up becoming clients. So it's kind of one of those where if you're action orientated and you've got a fair strategy, there's no way you don't find your first client on LinkedIn. I struggle to believe that you couldn't find at least one person.
Yeah, and I think with LinkedIn, like it's so clear to see what people do, so where they work, what they're working on, like it's so targeted. Like you can search for literally whatever you want on there, and you can really make an impact with the people that you're connecting with, and make sure that that is really targeted. So I think people miss the step of they might send out these connections and wonder why nobody's coming back to them or accepting those requests. But if your profile doesn't look complete, or you're not actually creating content that's relevant to your industry, people will be wondering why they should connect with you back. So I think even having a very basic strategy on LinkedIn of posting maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks about your industry whilst you're looking for a job, I think that's a really amazing place to start with it. And I kind of encourage a lot of students to do it before they graduate. But I find, and you might find this as well, they only get onto the platform once they graduate, or once they're like looking for a job. And I feel like there's so much opportunity there before you graduate to really start building up your personal brand on the platform too. So yeah, I mean, when did you start posting on LinkedIn? When was it that you?
June the 4th, 2022. But I actually had a profile from when I was a grad myself, but I never posted. I feel like it's gone on a journey, to be fair. I think it launched, was it sort of 2011 that it came onto the scene, but, or maybe even maybe earlier. But I was a 2016 grad, and I don't think LinkedIn was where it is now in terms of influencers, creators, that it being a really, really exciting place to be that sometimes rivals, Instagram back then. But yeah, I have been writing on the platform for a really long time now, actually. And I think that's another thing to bear in mind. I've been here for a while and I've not quit and I've not changed my niche. And I think that says something about credibility as well, because if you're too hasty to switch your niche because you think it's not working, or to just abandon it for 6 months and then come back, yes, of course, mitigating circumstances, but in general, I think people notice that. And I think people value it when they see every single week you're just in some capacity popping up on their feed. Hasn't always got to be viral content. It could even just be a few people, like literally under 10 likes, but somebody's going to see it. Some impressions are going to be made. And I actually think it gives the right impression in actual real life that you're here to stay and you're not just doing it for a quick buck. You can be relied upon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the engagement. So, like, how many likes are you getting? How many comments are you getting? But I don't know about you, but the amount of people that will come up to me and say, I saw your post about this particular topic. And I know for a fact they haven't liked it, but they've
Yeah.
seen it and it's on their radar and they've looked at it. And it's like, okay, interesting. More people are seeing your content. Like, all those impressions are different people looking at the content. Whether they like it or not, they're still paying attention to it. So, even if you feel like you're posting and you're not really getting a lot back, more people are seeing it, and you might be on the radar of employers or potential clients and customers if you're running a business that could potentially buy from you in the future. And it's all that kind of trust building, like you're saying, that credibility building piece that is really easy to underestimate if you're not seeing that direct engagement, especially in the beginning when you're trying to build from literally nothing. Because I think when we started speaking, I was quite like small on LinkedIn, like really just starting out with it, and kind of seeing people like, yeah, people like yourself and kind of other creators that had really been doing it long, probably done it about a year longer than me, maybe at that point. And I was like, okay, I can really see where this could potentially go. And kind of the fact that if you stay consistent with creating content, then you can really see that progress. And now, like another year later, continue to do that. And it's really just helped me grow the business massively. So yeah, I think there's so much in it that you really just have to trust in the process and invest that time into it. But like you said, I think it's really about that consistency of just staying with it and posting consistently every single week to see that progress, and build those connections as well.
100%. And again, if we're going back to having a business, you have to constantly be marketing your business anyway.
Mm,
So that's just the reality of life. Whether you've got 1,000 or 100,000 people, if you stop posting, then eventually the train's going to stop on the track. So it's almost just factoring it in as a non-negotiable part of your new life as a self-employed person. Just you always have to market anyway, so you might as well show up every day or most days.
yeah.
And yeah, just it's so easily said than done. I completely recognize that, but you have to extend the time horizon of just look back in a year and then assess how effective it's been, or even on a or micro scale. You know, I have this a lot with grads where they're like, oh, you know, I probably should network, I probably should send some connection requests, but nobody's getting back to me. I said, well, how long have you been doing it? Or how many have you sent out? Oh, 10. Oh, a week. It's like, okay, cool. Come back to me in 3 months. And just the thing of everybody has an equal chance of connecting with 100 people every single week. Even by default, if you do half of that for the next 3 months, there is no way that you don't end up on a connection call with somebody or somebody's been helpful to you in some way. But it is that long-term thinking and not expecting immediate gratification, because things like this just, it's a long-term game, but you get so much back from it. It's like the S&P. That's how I always explain it to people. It's like, don't expect insane returns, but you'll look back over 10 years and be damn pleased that you did it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like an investment, isn't it? It's an investment in your future and kind of seeing where it's going to go and kind of looking forward and thinking, okay, if I keep being consistent at this, like you said, there's pretty much no chance that it's not going to result in something. Like I've made friends through LinkedIn, like I've got opportunities through LinkedIn, got clients, but I definitely wouldn't have known that probably a year and a half ago when I was posting and feeling like nobody was paying attention to the content. But you do have to not compare yourself to people that are like 10, 20 steps down the line, they've been posting a lot longer, and think, why isn't my content doing as well as theirs? Because I think it's very easy with social media to fall into that comparison trap of thinking, okay, why am I not where they are at? But it's all part of that process. And the sooner that you start, the sooner you're going to see those results as well. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting one. I'm always encouraging my clients to do it, but I think you've got to make that process enjoyable as well. And I don't know, you probably enjoy creating content like I do, but I found, especially with LinkedIn, written content is where I enjoy it the most. I don't know about you. Do you feel the same, or is it more video content for you?
Oh, good question. I have a love-hate relationship with content creation, to be honest with you. And I've had loads of different phases. So, you know, I've had a phase where I've completely outsourced everything. I've had two freelancers, one to do TikTok and Instagram, one to do LinkedIn. I've then done it all myself, and I've done different hybrids in the middle. At the moment, I have one freelancer that helps me do LinkedIn ghostwriting, but we work really closely together, and I still write some of my own content at least once a week. But I am now handling my TikTok and Instagram. And I just think different things have different seasons. At the moment, I am kind of craving, I want to be in this a little bit more. I kind of want it to feel really, really aligned to my strategy. And I'm the best person who knows my strategy, especially, you know, I won't bore you, but things like maternity leave and that sort of thing. At the moment, me being really, really efficient is just so crucial. So at the moment, I'm actually quite enjoying being creative again, thinking, oh yeah, I have to come up with my ideas rather than just execute them blindly. But I've not always loved it. And I think that's again the reality of it. I compare things like LinkedIn to just going to the gym or having some sort of way that you train. A lot of people will see it as a reality of life. You have to move, you have to do something to keep yourself fit and healthy. It's just what you choose to do. Some days you're going to show up and love it. Other days it's going to be all grit and discipline and things in the middle. You'll have different seasons of one day it's CrossFit, the next minute it's something else, or high rocks, or like just regular bodybuilding or something else. And it's the same with social media. If you have that mentality of, okay, I have to do this no matter what, and then you're flexible about how it gets done, who you get it done with, what your approach is, then you'll find your way. But just knowing as a non-negotiable it has to get done, then I think it does make it easier for people to come
Yeah.
to terms with it.
Yeah, and I think as we're both like the faces of our businesses, like there's only so much you can outsource, isn't there, in terms of especially video content? Like we could potentially get other people to do the videos, but it wouldn't have the same impact as if we were in those pieces of content. So I think it's so important to still be in a part of the process. Like I'm exactly the same. I've got a freelancer that supports me with content as well. And I feel like being able to have somebody to bounce ideas off, bring different ideas to the table is so useful. And sometimes execute on those, but then you do still need to be involved in that content creation process in order to make it feel like your brand and make it feel like you. So yeah, I definitely have a love-hate relationship with it as well. LinkedIn is definitely my favorite platform, but video content, yeah, definitely love hate. I always resist filming content, but it is such a great way to build trust with your audience as well, which I think is so interesting. And the more people hear you speak and talk about things, especially as a coach or a mentor, they get to know you and your personality and decide whether you're the right person to work with them as well. So I think it's a really powerful tool that you can use.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I'm quite excited because I've had for a year now a really lovely freelancer help me with Instagram and TikTok, and I've just kind of gone through the motions of I've given a rough guide of what I think works. I then do the content, they then edit it, distribute it, all that kind of stuff. But I am now excited to go back into it and think, okay, what do I really want to be saying, and how do I want to be coming across, and how does that align with what actually needs to happen in terms of my business? Like, what are my priorities, what are the streams that I'm really prioritizing selling, that sort of thing. So I am quite excited to have it back in a way, but I'm sure at some point I'll get sick of it again. But it's just knowing that there will be peaks and troughs with your enjoyment, your motivation. But if you have that bigger why, and maybe this is maybe a good point to continue with, my why is I do not want to go back to employment. And my husband and I joke about this all the time. Just imagine if we were employed. And it's just this ongoing joke that life would just be rubbish. Because number one, if he went back to work and I was here, I'd be on my own the whole day. Just no way am I going to do that. But just even if we both went back to work, I know I would hate what I used to hate. The lack of autonomy, the kind of the micromanagement, the feeling that I don't have, I'm not in charge of the vision. I'm executing somebody else's vision. And that's fine. That's great when you're sort of earlier in your career potentially, or even just for the long haul. Everybody's different. But for me, I know myself too well. And I know that I would rather take the dissatisfaction or the difficulty of doing everything myself than handing it over and just taking a salary from somebody else. But everybody's different. There's no glory in me inherently being that type of person over anybody else, because I see that online of, it's kind of, you almost get that social kudos of like, oh, I'm self-employed, or I make money myself. I don't think it matters. It's whatever you want to do because it's your life. But I just know myself too well that to go back, I'm never doing that.
Yeah, I think knowing your why is so important. Like, once you identify that, and I think it's very hard at the start of your journey, especially if you're a new graduate coming out, you might not know what that is yet. But I think once you've identified what that is, you're like, okay, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I stay on that path towards that why. And I think for me, like so I studied fashion at university, and my why's very much linked to helping people. Like, that is something that I really enjoy doing. I get a lot of fulfillment out of it. And studying fashion and just creating and designing for no real reason, it didn't fulfill me in the same way as when I started my first business, the Calming Club, was all around helping people with their mental health. That gave me that fulfillment while still giving me that creativity and kind of being able to bring my ideas to life. It really gave me that direction to be like, okay, if I'm having an impact, then I feel like I'm on the right path. And like you said, like, there's no right or wrong answer. Like, just because that's my why compared to somebody else being in a 9 to 5, that doesn't mean it's any better than anybody else. But I think understanding that has definitely put me on the path that I'm on now towards working towards things that are really making me happy and fulfilled. So I think once you can find what that is, it really just makes things clearer and makes your decisions a lot easier, because you just know, is it aligned with my why? If it's not, then it's not the right decision for you. So, and has that helped like shape your path and the decisions that you've made along the way as well?
100%. It's helped me to make peace with what are the trade-offs with all of these different lifestyles. So, for example, in an ideal world, probably I wouldn't be on TikTok. It's not, although actually I say that, and recently I'm actually really enjoying TikTok. I feel like I'm on a really good algorithm at the moment. But for me, in terms of content creation, it doesn't feel, even though I feel like I'm actually okay speaking at the camera, I much prefer long form content rather than short form. So if I had it my way, I probably wouldn't be on TikTok, but I know how amazing it is for finding the people that I want to connect with and I want to help. So I'm willing to take it on the chin and just be like, okay, cool, this is what I have to do. If I want X, I'm going to need to do Y. And I think that's just the reality of having a business that works. It's just figuring out, okay, what are my absolute non-negotiables? So for example, for some people, it's just, I never want to work in person. I have to have an online business where I can travel and move. That's fine. But then what are the trade-offs that you have to also be happy with? Or what do you have to do in order to compensate for the fact that you only do things in a certain way? And if you can be at peace with those decisions, you'll have a great business and you'll stick at it. But I think if you're unclear about, okay, what do I really value over other things, then that's where it can build a bit of resentment towards your business.
Yeah, and I think that's especially where like a coach or a mentor can come in to like really help you uncover like, or even ChatGPT potentially if you need to ask it a few questions. I think that could be really where that comes in to really help you understand it and kind of pick things apart and be like, okay, where is that resentment coming from? What is it about that particular role? Like I was saying with me with fashion, it just felt like it was quite a selfish industry and it was very much focused on who could kind of get the best role and kind of at any cost. And that for me wasn't the kind of community space, kind of helping each other, sharing ideas that I wanted. It was very much working by yourself, whereas I prefer kind of working with other people too. So I think it's just about being self-aware and noticing, okay, what do I not like about this? Why is that? And then maybe how could I take a step towards what it is that I actually want, which sounds like is what you've done as part of your journey, going, okay, where am I interested in this thing? How could I maybe explore that and then see where that takes you, rather than having to have like a mapped out plan of like a career plan of this is what's going to happen next. So I think it's just about following that curiosity and seeing where it takes you.
Yeah, and again, being at peace with you're going to make mistakes, whether it is you trying to find the perfect dream job after uni or start the most perfect, most profitable business, you are going to make mistakes. There is just no way that you evade that. And sometimes we do need the lived experience of making mistakes to figure out, oh, I really don't like working in that way. Or, you know what, I thought I was going to love this type of career, but actually the reality is very different to the expectation. And you can leverage other people's expertise or stories to sort of maybe make smarter decisions. But I do feel like sometimes you just need to live it and breathe it to know for yourself, okay, that person thought it would be a great idea for me, but I'm here now and I really love it, or I hate it, or I'm in between and I want to change. So yeah, it's okay to make mistakes so long as you can recognize them, like you say, be self-aware, and if you want to change things, just figure out a way how you can pivot it over time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but I think there's, with the education system and the way it is, this is one thing I found is that a lot of people are really scared to make mistakes because the education system makes you kind of go for the perfect grade or always have to get the right answer and always have to know exactly what it is, rather than being able to kind of get it wrong and then kind of be, that's okay. It's not going to be the end of the world. And that's one thing that I've definitely found working with people so soon out of education, or maybe even still in education, that they're always looking for the right answer. But in the real world, the right answer doesn't always exist because there's many different options that you could take that could lead to different things. I don't know if that's something you've experienced as well, working with
100%.
graduates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm nodding like crazy because probably the biggest question I get asked is, this person has just said this to me, or what if this person says this to me at interview? What should I say?
Mm.
As if there is the perfect script or the perfect template or the perfect way to network with somebody. That does not exist. There is best practice for sure, but within that, like you say, there's a million and one different sort of iterations that you could stick to the best practice. But yes, I definitely noticed this. This is probably collectively the biggest shortcoming, I would say, of Gen Z, that they're so preoccupied with how do I do this and what's the right way, the perfect way, the best way, versus just that I'm going to do it. And therefore it means that they're not as action oriented as I would love for them to be a lot of the time. But it's something that can be overcomable for sure. I mean, I've got so many sort of client stories where when we first worked together, we would have that push and pull of, you tell me first, like, what do you want to say? What do you think you should say? And then maybe I give a little bit of critique or feedback on things to finesse it. And then by the end of the point, that they're then sending their own emails and follow-up notes and just doing amazing things without even the sort of the reminder of like, oh, did you send a thank you email, that sort of thing. And it's just amazing, just such a pleasure to then read back and be like, wow, that's better than even what I would come up with. But I think it is that process of push and pull and giving feedback, but then also taking risks and just learning through your own process as well. But yeah, if there's one thing that I could just grant that generation, it would be just be more open to get things wrong and just take action anyway. You'll be further than the person who takes 50% of the action but gets it right.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I like talk about this quite a lot in terms of just like taking messy action. Just be like, okay, don't really know what this looks like, but I'm going to move forward. And I think this is where a coach and a mentor really comes in, because they can really push you. Like the amount of clients that say to me, I want to start doing content, I want to start creating this for my business, and then they'll come back to the next session, they'll be like, oh, I didn't do it, or oh, I didn't get a chance to. And I'm like, okay, where is the resistance here? Like, what's showing up? Why couldn't you do it? And then the kind of excuses come out, but then you get to the bottom of it and it's like, actually, it's the anxiety, it's the kind of getting it perfect. Like, I don't know how to set up the camera, I don't know what the lighting should be like. It's like, just film the first video and take that first step. You don't have to post it, but at least you've taken that step forward, and it doesn't have to be perfect. But also, it's very unlikely you're going to get it perfect on the first go, because you get better over time. So I think it's really just about not being afraid of it not being perfect, and actually just taking that action and moving forward.
Perfection is always relative to where you are at that time. So
Yeah.
even 3 years ago, what I thought then was the most perfect content, I'll look back at now and think, oh, that's trash, or that's just not what I would do, or just or time has moved on even. So it's a very, very fluid thing. Nothing is going to be perfect forever. So you have to take messy action anyway.
Yeah, and what's perfect to you might not be perfect to somebody else as well. It's also subjective in how people view things. So you're never going to please everybody. So the best thing you can do is just take that action and move forward as well. So I always end off these episodes with asking you, what would be in your self-made starter pack? So if you were to go back to, well, the start of your business journey, or you could give yourself at the start of your business journey 3 things, so a tool, a habit, or a book or a podcast could be, that you'd recommend to them, what would it be?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Okay. A tool, a book, a habit. I think the habit would be, no matter what, posting something every single day on social media, especially in the beginning, because you don't have clients yet. So really there is no excuse. If you're not serving clients, you should be marketing to clients. So I think that's just a really good philosophy and habit just to have down. And through the iterations, you'll get better and better anyway. I think as well, it's maybe all going to be like philosophy or habits, but experiment regularly, maybe every single month, having some sort of thing that you're testing out and then evaluating to be like, okay, did that work? Do I need to change it? It could be content, it could be the way that you deliver a client session, it could be a masterclass, it could be anything. But if you're iterating and then reiterating based on the evaluation, you'll look back in a year, 2 years and be like, wow, okay, I've learned so much. So it is repetition, but also reflecting on the repetition. I really want to give you a book, but I feel like I don't have one, which is sad. And I listen to so many podcasts, but there's not really one that really sort of stands out to me, to be honest with you. Gosh, I'm struggling.
It's a difficult question. I think, is there any particular creator of a podcast? It doesn't necessarily have to be an episode. It could be one that you listen to regularly, or a book that you've picked up before that you think has been transformational to your journey so far.
Gosh. I'm very, very eclectic with who I listen to and content that I interact with, to be honest with you.
Or it could be a couple. If you've got a few that are coming to mind that you're like, these wouldn't necessarily be my number one, but these would be the ones that I'm listening to right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been an avid fan of Diary of the CEO. And I do really respect Stephen Bartlett, bless him. I feel like he gets a lot of slack online. And I actually think he's a really, really solid guy that's just trying to build a personal brand. It's just very, very, very successful at it. Yeah, I do remember in the early days, like sort of traveling around Bali and Thailand and just every day, like listening to one of his podcasts or episodes. So probably him, but it's more just sort of, it's more inspiration, but I don't think it's actually practical application to my business, because I think maybe one thing to finish up on is that I see a lot in 2025, and I think this is probably here to stay, that there is a glorification of starting a company and having lots of employees, scaling to 7, 8, 9 figures, exiting, all that kind of stuff. Like, are you going to be bootstrapped, or are you going to get funding? I don't think that's accessible to, I'm going to say 90% of people. Not because they can't do it, they absolutely could do it if they wanted to, but I don't think that's the lifestyle most people are chasing down. When I watch his recent behind the scenes vlogs, I like love it for him, but totally overwhelmed. I'm thinking every second of your day is catered to something. There is no white space in your diary, and that just makes me feel ill. And that's not why I became self-employed. I'm not saying work-life balance is, you should be all towards life, because if you need to get things done in your business, you get them done. But I think solopreneurship is really, really underrated. So take inspiration from people who are building big companies, but know that that doesn't have to be your trajectory for success. You can be very, very successful financially, emotionally, everything, just doing things yourself with maybe a few freelancers or just like a little bit of tools and support. But there's no inherent glory in having huge companies that are, being sold and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's why I felt quite detached from the idea of being a business owner or an entrepreneur when I was like going through university, because I thought that was the only way to have a big company and kind of have hundreds of employees. But actually, there's so many spaces in between that you could be a solopreneur. You could have, like you said, a small team of freelancers. You could have a small team. Like, you can make it work for you depending on what stage you want to be at and what size you want to grow to as well, and what you want your lifestyle to look like. So I think it's really important to recognize that. And also, like, when we're looking at other content creators and people online, it's like, what parts do we want to take from those kind of lifestyles, and maybe what bits do we actually want to like say, actually that's not for me, because that's what success looks like for somebody else, but it's not necessarily right for me, and that's not what it looks like for me as well. So yeah, I think that's a really great insight.
Great.
It's really, really useful. Oh, well, thank you so much. This has been so interesting. I feel like we could talk about all this stuff for ages because there's so
Yeah.
much we could dive into. But yeah, I think it's been really, really useful to just like hear about the realities of building a business. And that's the whole point of this podcast series, is to talk about what it really takes to grow a business from scratch, and like the journey that you've been on to get to where you are right now. So thank you for being so honest and sharing all of the things that have helped you get this far. If people want to find you online, where is the best place that they can connect with you or find out more information?
LinkedIn. Probably obvious by this point. Yeah, no, I'd say LinkedIn. Would love to have anyone connect, albeit I'm actually not great with accepting connection requests. So if anyone's really, really keen to get a hold of me, my email. So farah@thegradcoach.co.uk.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this episode,
Hey,
and go and have check out Farah's work and go have a look at her website, because there's so much amazing support over there too. But thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, let me